Now let's begin. The coffee was still hot when Dean Harris poured it, steam curling up from the mug in lazy spirals. Through the kitchen window, he watched Kirsten load the last of her designer luggage into her Mercedes. She'd been packing for this girl's trip to Napa Valley for weeks, treating it like a military operation. Dean had learned not to question her elaborate preparations. In the 6 years since their son Jordan's accident, questioning Kirsten only led to fights that left him sleeping on the couch. 2 weeks is a long time, Dean had mentioned the night before, careful to keep his tone neutral. Kirsten had given him that practiced smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. The girls and I need this, Dean. You have no idea how exhausting it's been, dealing with everything here. Everything here. That's what she called their son now. Not Jordan. Not our boy. Everything. Dean took a sip of coffee and glanced at the ceiling. Jordan was still asleep upstairs, or at least he was supposed to be. The specialized hospital bed Kirsten had insisted on installing had cost a fortune. So had the motorized wheelchair, the bathroom modifications, the physical therapy equipment that gathered dust in the corner of Jordan's room, because Kirsten had fired the last 3 therapists for not showing enough progress. The Mercedes engine roared to life. Kirsten didn't come back inside to say goodbye. She didn't even wave. The car reversed down the driveway with the kind of aggressive speed that made the tires squeal slightly. Dean watched until the vehicle disappeared around the corner of their suburban Seattle cul-de-sac. He stood there for a moment, coffee cup in hand, feeling the strange weight of silence settle over the house. 14 days. Just him and Jordan. No Kirsten hovering over them with her clipboard and her schedules and her pills. The pills. Jordan took so many pills. Dean had tried to learn what they all were, but Kirsten controlled all the medical decisions. She was the one who spoke to the doctors, who filled the prescriptions, who measured out the doses 3 times a day. The sound came from behind him. Footsteps. Normal, steady footsteps descending the stairs. Dean's coffee mug shattered on the kitchen floor. He spun around, heart hammering against his ribs, and saw something impossible. Jordan stood at the base of the staircase, fully upright, walking toward him with purposeful strides. Not shuffling, not stumbling, walking like he'd never stopped. Dad. Jordan's voice was urgent, breathless. At 12 years old, his son had his mother's dark hair, but Dean's gray eyes. Eyes that were now sharp with an intelligence and fear that Dean had never seen before. We need to leave the house now. Right now. Dean couldn't move. Couldn't process. 6 years. Jordan had been in that wheelchair for 6 years. The accident at the lake house when he was 6. The fall from the dock that the doctors said had damaged his spinal cord beyond repair. The endless nights of watching his son struggle, the crushing weight of medical bills, the slow death of his marriage under the pressure. Jordan, what? How are you? There's no time. Jordan grabbed his father's arm with surprising strength. I'll explain everything, but we have to go. She set something up. They're coming. Who's coming? What are you talking about? But even as Dean asked, something cold settled in his stomach. The way Kirsten had left. No goodbye. The aggressive speed. The finality of it. Jordan was already moving toward the garage, pulling Dean with him. I've been faking it, Dad. For 4 years, I've been faking. I'm so sorry, but I had to. If she knew I could walk, she would have. His voice cracked. Please, just trust me. Get the car keys. We have to leave before. The sound that cut him off was unmistakable. An engine. A large engine, like a truck, pulling into their driveway. Dean's mind raced through the possibilities. Delivery? No delivery scheduled. Landscapers? They came on Thursdays. Through the frosted glass of the front door, he could see the outline of a large vehicle. A van. Dark-colored. Jordan's face went white. They're early. The garage. Now, something in his son's terror override Dean's paralysis. He grabbed his keys from the hook by the door and ran. They burst through the door into the garage where Dean's Chevy Tahoe sat. He fumbled with the key fob, hands shaking, as Jordan climbed into the passenger seat with an agility that should have been impossible. The garage door opener. Dean hit the button and the door began its slow mechanical rise. Too slow. Everything was happening too slow. He started the engine, threw the car into reverse. Through the rising garage door, Dean could see boots. 2 pairs of boots. Men's boots. Heavy. Work boots. Go, go, go. Jordan shouted. Dean didn't think. He slammed his foot on the accelerator. The Tahoe shot backward out of the garage with a force that pressed them both into their seats. The men jumped aside. Dean caught a glimpse of dark clothing, ski masks, something metallic in one man's hand. And then they were in the street, tires screaming as Dean yanked the wheel. "Drive toward the industrial district," Jordan said, breathing hard. "Near the shipping yards. There's a storage unit. Number 247. I'll explain everything there." Dean's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He checked the rearview mirror. The dark van was pulling out of the driveway, beginning to follow. "Jordan, you need to tell me what the hell is going on. Right now." His son turned in the seat, and Dean saw tears streaming down the boy's face. "Mom's been trying to kill us. Both of us. And I have proof." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Dean's brain rejected them automatically. Kirsten, his wife, the mother of his child. She was cold, yes, distant. But murder? That's insane, Dean said, but his voice sounded hollow even to himself. 4 years ago, I started getting better, Jordan said rapidly, watching the van in the side mirror. My legs started working again. The doctors called it a miracle, spontaneous recovery. But Mom got really upset. Really upset, Dad. She increased my medications. And I started getting worse again. Dizzy. Weak. I couldn't figure it out until I pretended to take my pills one day and hid them instead. Dean swerved around a slower car, his mind reeling. You're saying she was poisoning me? Yes. To keep me paralyzed. And she's poisoning you too, Dad. In your coffee. Every morning. Haven't you noticed how tired you've been? How foggy? He had. God help him, he had. The exhaustion that never quite went away. The way his thoughts sometimes seemed to move through molasses. He'd blamed stress, age, the burden of caregiving. I've been watching her for 4 years, Jordan continued. Playing paralyzed so she wouldn't know I figured it out. I've been collecting evidence. Recordings. Her pills and yours that I swapped out and hid. Documents. Dad, she's done this before. What? Her first husband, Paul Costello. He died in a house fire 7 years ago, right before she married you. Life insurance paid out almost $1 million. Jordan's voice was shaking. I found everything. She's planning the same thing for us. That's why she went on this trip. Those men back there, they're going to make it look like an electrical fire. Tonight, we were supposed to be asleep. Dead. Dean's hands were trembling so badly, he nearly lost control of the wheel. He forced himself to breathe. To focus. The storage facility was coming up on the right. You've had proof for 4 years and never told me? I was scared. Jordan's voice broke. I was 8 years old when I figured it out. Who would believe me? And she watches you all the time. I couldn't risk telling you when she might hear. I had to wait until she left. I had to plan. Dean pulled into the storage facility, using the code Jordan recited from memory. The van followed but kept its distance, now cautious. Dean navigated the maze of orange doors until Jordan pointed at number 247. He parked and they both jumped out. Jordan was already punching in a code on the keypad. The door rolled up to reveal something that stopped Dean's heart. The entire unit was a command center. Laptop, cameras, filing boxes, a wall covered in photographs, documents, and string connecting them like something out of a crime thriller. And in the center, a photograph of a man Dean didn't recognize. Mid-30s. Handsome. Smiling at the camera. Paul Costello. Jordan said quietly. Mom's first victim. Dad, I've been building the case against her for 4 years. Everything we need to destroy her is right here. Dean stared at his 12-year-old son, this stranger who'd spent a third of his life pretending to be paralyzed, playing the long game against his own mother. And he realized he had no idea who Jordan really was, or what his son was capable of. Outside, he heard the van's engine idling. Waiting. The storage unit was climate-controlled, which explained how Jordan's equipment had survived for however long he'd been sneaking here. Dean counted 4 laptops, 2 tablets, and enough hard drives to stock a small electronics store. The wall of evidence looked like something from a federal investigation. How did you even do all this? Dean asked, still trying to wrap his mind around it. Jordan pulled down the rolling door, sealing them inside. I had help. Sort of. He moved to one of the laptops and opened it. After I figured out what Mom was doing, I knew I had to be smart. I started with the basics, pretending to be asleep when she thought I was knocked out from the medication. I heard things. Phone calls. Her talking to Grandma Marjorie. Your grandmother knows about this? Knows about it. Jordan's laugh was bitter, wrong coming from someone so young. She's the one who planned it. This is the family business, Dad. He pulled up a file, and Dean found himself looking at a family tree. The Cunningham family. But it wasn't a normal family tree. Next to several names were dates, dollar amounts, and the word deceased. 3 generations, Jordan said softly. The Cunningham women marry men with money or good life insurance. They slowly poison them, make them dependent, and then stage accidents. House fires mostly, but Aunt Deb's second husband drowned. Cousin Tracy's husband had a car accident. He clicked through files. I've documented 12 cases over 30 years. Dean felt sick. He'd met Marjorie Cunningham dozens of times. The sweet grandmother who brought cookies to family gatherings. Who'd helped with Jordan after the accident. Who'd been in their house countless times, with access to everything. The storage unit, Dean said. How did you rent it? You're 12. I didn't. Paul Costello did. Jordan pulled up another document. Before he died, he rented this unit. I found the key in a box of Mom's things she thought she'd hidden. There was a letter inside. He knew something was wrong. He was documenting her too, but he didn't figure it out in time. He opened a small lockbox and pulled out a handwritten letter. Dean recognized the controlled panic in the shaky handwriting. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Kirsten is not who she seems. I've been sick for months. The doctors can't figure out what's wrong. She insists on handling all my medication. I've started to suspect. The letter ended there. Unfinished. Dean imagined Paul Costello, sitting in this very storage unit, racing against time to document his suspicions before whatever poison Kirsten was using took full effect. He'd lost the race. I've been adding to his research, Jordan said. Whenever Mom thought I was asleep, I was actually watching, listening, recording. She and Grandma Marjorie would talk in my room sometimes, thinking I was unconscious from the medication. They discussed the plan, the timeline, the insurance money. Dean paced the small space, trying to organize his spiraling thoughts. The men outside. The van. Vince Humphrey and Randall Piper. They work for Grandma Marjorie. They've done this before, staged the accidents. Made them look natural. Tonight was supposed to be our turn. Jordan's voice hardened. But I've been ready. I swapped the SIM cards and the security cameras around our house 3 months ago. Everything that happens there tonight will record to a cloud server they don't know about. Dean stopped pacing and really looked at his son. Jordan stood straighter than Dean remembered from 6 years ago, shoulders back, jaw set. There was steel in those gray eyes. Whatever the last 4 years had done to him, living a lie, watching his mother plot his murder, it had forged something unbreakable. We need to call the police, Dean said. No. Jordan's response was immediate. Not yet. We don't have enough. Everything I have is circumstantial. Recordings from a child could be dismissed. The evidence about Paul Costello is old. A good lawyer would tear it apart. He gestured to the wall. We need more. We need them to actually try it. To commit the crime. Then we'll have them. Are you insane? Dean's voice rose. You want to let them burn down our house? With us supposedly inside. They already think we're going to be inside. Jordan moved to another laptop and pulled up a live feed. It showed their house, multiple angles. Dean recognized their living room, kitchen, Jordan's bedroom. I installed hidden cameras everywhere. We're going to watch them do it. Document everything. And then, he pulled up another screen showing email drafts, video files queued up. Then we're going to destroy them completely. A knock on the storage unit door made them both jump. It wasn't loud, almost polite. Then a voice, muffled but clear, Mr. Harris. Jordan, we know you're in there. Let's talk about this like reasonable people. Dean recognized the voice from somewhere. Where had he? The funeral. Paul Costello's funeral. Kirsten had dragged him to it 7 years ago when they'd just started dating. She'd introduced him to people from her life. One of them had been this voice. Jordan pulled up a photograph on his laptop. A man in his 50s, graying hair, friendly smile. The kind of face you'd trust. Vince Humphrey, Jordan whispered. Grandma Marjorie's boyfriend. He's killed at least 5 people that I can prove. We just want to talk, Vince continued. There's been a misunderstanding. Your mother is worried about you, Jordan. She asked us to check on you when you didn't answer your phone. Dean looked at his son, who was shaking his head. He's lying. Mom's been texting with them all morning. I saw the messages on her iPad before she left. He pulled up screenshots. Sure enough, texts between Kirsten and Vince. They'll both be asleep by 10 p.m. Make it look electrical. I want it done before midnight. Understood. Piper has the accelerant. We'll make it quick. Good. I can't do another 6 years of this. The kid creeps me out. Dean felt something crack inside his chest. The kid. His son. Her son. She'd called him the kid, like he was an inconvenience. Like they both were. Mr. Harris, Vince called out. Dean, I know what Jordan's been telling you. He's a sick boy. The medications affect his mind. We're here to help him. Jordan pulled out his phone and showed Dean a video. It was time-stamped from 3 months ago. Grainy footage from a hidden camera showed Kirsten in Jordan's room, late at night. She held a syringe. Dean watched, horror mounting, as she injected something into Jordan's foreline, the one she insisted he needed for nighttime nutrition. Liquid diazepam, Jordan whispered. Enough to keep me sedated for 12 hours. I've been swapping my 4 bags for months, filling them with saline, letting her think it was working. The metal door of the storage unit shuddered. They were trying to force it open. We have to go, Dean said. Now? Is there another way out? Jordan was already moving, pulling a backpack from behind the filing boxes. I planned for this. There's a ventilation shaft in the back corner. It connects to the next unit, which I also rented under a fake name. We can get out through there, get to the car I have parked 2 rows over. You have a car? It's Paul Costello's old Honda. I found the keys and title in the storage unit. Been keeping it maintained. Jordan was unscrewing the vent cover with practiced efficiency. I've had 4 years to plan for every possibility, Dad. Trust me. The door shuttered again. Harder this time. They had maybe a minute before it gave way. Dean grabbed the backpack his son handed him, watching as Jordan gathered specific laptops and hard drives with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed this escape. His 12-year-old son. His baby, who'd been living a nightmare for a third of his life, playing spy against his own mother. Go, Jordan said, gesturing to the open vent. I'll be right behind you. Dean hesitated. Jordan. I know, Dad. I know this is insane, but we're going to make them pay for what they did. To Paul. To us. To everyone. His voice was cold. Adult. Nothing like a child's. Now go. Dean crawled into the ventilation shaft, the metal cool against his hands. Behind him, he heard Jordan following, then the sound of the storage unit door finally giving way. Shouts. Footsteps. But they were already gone, moving through the darkness toward whatever came next. The Honda that Paul Costello had driven 7 years ago was a gray Civic with a dent in the passenger door. It started on the first try, which Dean took as either a good sign or proof that his son had indeed been maintaining it. They pulled out of the storage facility's back exit, while Vince Humphrey and his partner were still searching the unit. Dean drove aimlessly at first, just putting distance between them and danger. His mind wouldn't stop racing. Every assumption he'd built his life on for the past 6 years was burning down. Kirsten, his marriage, Jordan's paralysis, all of it lies, all of it calculated. Where are we going? He finally asked. Jordan had 3 laptops open on his lap, fingers flying across keyboards. Motel 6 on Highway 99. I booked a room 3 days ago under Paul Costello's name. Paid cash. They won't look for us there. You're 12 years old. How did you book? I look older when I wear the right clothes and speak with confidence. People see what they expect to see. Jordan didn't look up from his screens. I've been out of the house dozens of times over the last 4 years. Mom thought I was paralyzed and sedated. I'd wait until she was asleep, then leave for a few hours. Library computers. Coffee shops with Wi-Fi. Building this case. Dean's hands tightened on the wheel. His son. His brilliant, terrifying son. Jordan, you're a kid. You shouldn't have had to. But I did. Now Jordan looked at him, and Dean saw the weight his son carried. The loneliness of it. Because if I didn't, we'd both be dead. The truth of it settled over them like ash. Dean wanted to argue, to say that he would have protected them, that he would have figured it out. But he hadn't. He'd been too tired, too foggy, too caught up in the grind of medical bills and insurance claims, and trying to hold together a marriage that was already dead. The poison. In his morning coffee. Every single day for 6 years. How much damage had it done? What was she giving me? He asked quietly. Jordan pulled up a file. Started with benzodiazepines. Valium derivatives. Enough to keep you compliant, tired, easier to control. The last 2 years, she added small doses of lithium. Affects cognitive function when you're not bipolar. Makes you foggy, uncertain, easier to gaslight. Dean remembered the arguments. The times Kirsten had told him he was remembering things wrong. That he was confused. That his version of events didn't make sense. He'd started to doubt himself, his own memories, his own mind. How did you even figure this out? Google at first, then medical textbooks from the library. I'd photograph pages with my phone. Mom got me the phone so I could call for help if I needed it, but she never thought I'd use it for research. Jordan clicked through screens. I documented everything. Every pill she gave me. Every symptom. Cross-referenced them with toxicology databases. Then I started testing, taking some pills, hiding others, noting how I felt. Building a pattern. Jesus, Jordan. That was dangerous. More dangerous than letting her kill me? His son's voice was sharp. I did what I had to do, and I got smart about it. Started connecting with online communities, medical forums, true crime groups. I found other people who'd been through similar things. They helped me understand what I was seeing. The Motel 6 appeared on the right, a dingy two-story building that probably rented rooms by the hour. Perfect for disappearing. Dean parked in the back, and they grabbed their bags. The room Jordan had booked was on the second floor, corner unit with a view of the parking lot. Inside, it smelled like cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. 2 double beds, a TV bolted to the dresser, curtains that had seen better decades. But it was safe. For now. Jordan immediately set up his laptops on the small table, creating a command center. Dean watched him work. This stranger who looked like his son. The efficiency of movement. The focus. Where had the child gone? When had Jordan stopped being a kid? For years, Dean said out loud. You've been playing this role for 4 years. Pretending to be paralyzed. That's, Jordan, that's necessary. Jordan plugged in a hard drive. But also horrible. I won't lie, Dad. There were times I wanted to tell you so badly. Times I almost broke. But I couldn't risk it. If Mom suspected for even a second that I knew, she would have accelerated the timeline. We'd be dead. Dean sat on the bed, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the crushing weight of reality. Your childhood. I can't get that back for you. I know. Jordan's voice softened. But I'm alive. We're both alive. And we're going to make sure they pay for what they did. The police. Won't be enough. Jordan turned to face him fully. I've thought about this for 4 years, Dad. Every angle. If we go to the police now, what do we have? Some recordings that could be called hearsay. Evidence about Paul Costello's death that was ruled accidental 7 years ago. Pills I stole that could be explained away. And Grandma Marjorie has connections. Her brother is a judge. Her nephew is a prosecutor. The Cunninghams have been doing this for 30 years because they know how to make it disappear. Dean's stomach churned. So what are you saying? I'm saying we need ironclad proof. Video evidence of them actually committing a crime. Confessions. Financial records. We need to build a case so airtight that their connections won't matter. Jordan pulled up the security feed from their house. And tonight, we're going to get it. The screen showed multiple angles of their empty home. Living room. Kitchen. Hallway. Jordan's bedroom with the hospital bed. Everything looked normal. Quiet. Waiting. They think we're in there, Jordan said. Asleep from the medication. Helpless. They're going to come back tonight to finish the job. And we're going to record all of it. And then what? Dean asked. They burn down the house. We show the video to police. And hope it's enough? No. Then we go deeper. Jordan opened another file, this one showing financial records. Bank accounts. Wire transfers. Life insurance policies. While they're committing arson tonight, I'm going to be hacking into Grandma Marjorie's personal server. She keeps everything digital now. All the records of their operations. Names, dates, methods. It's all there. I've been working on breaking through her security for 8 months. Tonight, while they're distracted, while they think they've won, I'm going to take everything. Dean stared at his son. You learn hacking? YouTube tutorials. Online forums. Practice. Jordan shrugged like it was nothing. Like 12-year-olds learn to hack criminal enterprises every day. I'm pretty good at it now. Not genius level, but good enough. Grandma Marjorie's security is strong, but she made one mistake. She trusted a company that had a data breach 6 months ago. I got admin credentials from the dark web. Been patient, waiting for the right moment. The right moment being when they think we're dead. Exactly. Jordan's smile was cold. They'll be celebrating. Sloppy. That's when I strike. Dean stood and paced the small motel room. Everything in him screamed that this was wrong, that they should go to the police, that a 12-year-old shouldn't be masterminding a counter-operation against his homicidal family. But another part of him, the part that had been poisoned for 6 years, that had watched his son suffer, that had been made a fool of. That part wanted blood. "Walk me through it," he said finally. "The whole plan. Everything." Jordan nodded and pulled up a timeline. "Tonight, between 10 p.m. and midnight, Vince Humphrey and Randall Piper will enter our house. They'll use Kirsten's key. She gave them a copy. They'll set up an electrical fire, probably in the basement. Make it look like faulty wiring. The house will burn fast. They've been planning this for months." "How do you know all this?" "Mom's iPad. She syncs it with her phone and doesn't realize I can access both through the cloud. I've read every text, every email. I know the whole plan." He clicked through screenshots. "While the house burns, I'll be here, breaking into Grandma Marjorie's server. I'll download everything. 30 years of evidence. Names of victims. Financial records. Communication between family members. Everything. And if the hack doesn't work, then we still have the arson on video. Multiple angles. That alone is enough to start an investigation. But with Marjorie's files, we can bring down the entire operation. Every Cunningham involved. Every victim gets justice." Dean looked at the evidence wall Jordan had recreated on his laptop screens. Paul Costello's smiling face. Other men, 12 of them, Jordan had said. 12 husbands. 12 murders disguised as accidents. "Tell me about Paul," Dean said quietly. Jordan pulled up a folder. Inside were dozens of photos, documents, even video files. He was a software engineer. Met Mom at a tech conference in Portland. Whirlwind romance. Married in 6 months. He had a life insurance policy worth $800,000 through his company. Jordan's voice was clinical, detached. He started getting sick 8 months into the marriage. Chronic fatigue. Muscle weakness. Confusion. Doctors couldn't find anything wrong. Sound familiar? It did. Too familiar. He figured it out about 2 weeks before he died. Started this storage unit. Started documenting. But he ran out of time. Jordan pulled up security footage, grainy, from 7 years ago. It showed a house Dean didn't recognize. Night vision. And then flames. Electrical fire, the investigation said. Paul was found in his bedroom. Smoke inhalation. The insurance paid out. Mom was the grieving widow. She moved to Seattle 6 months later and met you. Dean felt bile rise in his throat. "I was next. You were next. But she got pregnant with me, and I think that complicated things. She actually seemed happy for a while when I was a baby. I've seen pictures." She smiled differently. Jordan's face tightened. "But then I started growing up. Started being a person instead of a prop. Started asking questions. I think that's when she decided we both had to go. The accident at the lake house wasn't an accident. I remember it clearly. I was 6, but I remember. She pushed me off the dock. Told everyone I slipped, but I remember her hands on my back. The force of it. Jordan's hands were shaking now. I hit my head on the dock support. Nearly drowned. They said the trauma caused the paralysis. But it didn't. That came later, from the medications she started giving me in the hospital." Dean moved to his son's side and put a hand on his shoulder. Jordan flinched at first, then relaxed into the touch. How long had it been since Dean had really touched him? The hospital bed had created distance. The wheelchair. The constant monitoring. Kirsten had controlled all physical contact, all care. "I'm sorry," Dean said. "I should have seen it. Should have protected you. You were being poisoned too." She made sure of that. Jordan looked up at him, and Dean saw tears threatening. "I don't blame you, Dad. I blame her. I blame all of them. And I'm going to make them pay." The determination in those young eyes was fierce. Unshakable. Dean recognized it because he felt it too, burning in his chest where his heart used to be. "Okay," he said. "We do this your way. But I have conditions." "What conditions?" "You stay here. You run the technical side, the hacking, the recordings, coordinating everything. But if anything goes wrong, if they figure out we're not in the house, I'm the one who deals with it. Not you. You've already sacrificed 4 years of your childhood. You don't sacrifice anything else." Jordan started to protest, but Dean cut him off. "I mean it. You've been the adult for too long. Let me be your father. Let me protect you, even if it's 4 years too late." Something in Jordan's expression crumbled. The adult facade slipped, and for a moment, Dean saw the scared kid underneath. The child who'd been alone in this fight for so long. "Okay," Jordan whispered. "Okay, Dad." They spent the next few hours preparing. Jordan walked Dean through every system, every camera feed, every contingency plan. The kid had thought of everything, Backup power for the recordings, multiple redundant servers, emergency contacts who'd receive the evidence if something went wrong. Who are these contacts? Dean asked, looking at the list. True crime podcasters, journalists, people who'll actually investigate if we disappear. Jordan pulled up profiles. I've been building relationships with them for 2 years. They think I'm a 25-year-old researcher interested in unsolved cases. If we don't check in by tomorrow noon, they all get packets of evidence. Dean shook his head in amazement. You really have thought of everything. I had to. It was the only way to survive. At 8 p.m., they ordered pizza from a place 3 blocks away. Dean went to pick it up, wearing a baseball cap and keeping his head down. The paranoia was new but necessary. He kept expecting to see Kirsten or Vince or someone from the Cunningham family. But the streets were normal. People going about their lives, unaware that a child had been waging a secret war against serial killers. Back at the motel, they ate in silence, watching the feeds from their house. Everything remained still, waiting. At 9:30 p.m., Jordan's laptop pinged. A text message to Kirsten's phone, which Jordan was monitoring. Ready to go. Piper has everything. 10:45 entry. Kirsten's response came quickly. Make it clean. I want to be able to come home to ashes. Dean felt his last shred of doubt evaporate. This was real. His wife wanted him dead. Wanted their son dead. Had been planning it for months, maybe years. It's time, Jordan said. He started typing, his fingers flying across multiple keyboards. Windows opened and closed on the screens. Code scrolled past. I'm initiating the hack on Grandma Marjorie's server. It'll take about an hour to crack through, then another hour to download everything. That gives them time to commit the arson, time to get sloppy. Dean watched the clock. 10 p.m., 10:15, 10:30. At 10:43 p.m., the security cameras caught movement. A dark van pulled into their driveway, lights off. 2 figures emerged. Vince Humphrey and another man, Randall Piper, Dean assumed. They moved with practiced efficiency toward the house. They're using Kirsten's key, Jordan narrated, zooming in on one camera. Entering through the front door. See how they're carrying bags. That's the accelerant and ignition devices. Dean watched his home being invaded. These men walked through his living room, his kitchen, the hallway where Jordan had taken his first steps. They were casual about it. Experienced. Basement access, Jordan continued. The camera showed them opening the basement door. They'll set up multiple ignition points. Make it look like an overloaded circuit. The fire will spread through the walls, cut off exit routes. We would have died in our sleep, never knowing what happened. On screen, Vince Humphrey was setting up small devices near electrical panels, behind the water heater, along the support beams. Dean recognized them from movies, incendiary devices with timers. How long do we have? Dean asked. They'll set the timers for midnight. Gives them time to get clear, establish alibis. By the time the fire department arrives, the house will be fully involved. Jordan's voice was steady, clinical. We have 90 minutes. The hack progress bar on another screen showed 47% complete. What if they figure out we're not there? Dean asked. What if they check the bedrooms? They won't. Mom confirmed we'd be sedated. They trust her intel. Jordan pulled up more texts. Besides, they're professionals. In and out fast. Minimal risk. They've done this before. On camera, Vince and Randall were moving back upstairs. They did a quick sweep of the house. Dean's bedroom, Jordan's room with the empty hospital bed. Vince pointed at the bed and said something to Randall. They both laughed. Dean's hands clenched into fists. They were laughing. Laughing about murdering a child. Easy, Dad, Jordan said softly. We've got them. This is all being recorded in real time to 3 separate servers. Cloud backup. Encrypted. Timestamped. They're done. The 2 men left the house at 11:02 p.m. The van pulled away, lights still off, disappearing into the Seattle night. Timers are set, Jordan confirmed, checking the camera feeds. Midnight. We have 58 minutes until ignition. The hack progress bar hit 73%. Dean paced the motel room, adrenaline making it impossible to sit still. After we have everything, after the house burns, what's the play? We go to the FBI, not local police. I've already identified the agent we need, Sam Osborne, White Collar Crime Division. He specializes in complex fraud cases. I've been anonymously feeding him information about the Cunninghams for 6 months. He's already investigating. He just doesn't have enough for warrants yet. You've been talking to the FBI? Through encrypted channels. He thinks I'm a whistleblower inside their organization. Tomorrow morning, we show up at his office with everything. The arson video. Marjorie's files. Paul Costello's evidence. Testimony about the poisoning. Medical records I've been stealing and copying. All of it. By tomorrow afternoon, the Cunninghams will be in custody. The progress bar hit 89%. At 11:47 p.m., Jordan's laptop chimed. We're in. Downloading now. Dean watched as folders and files began transferring. Financial records. Communication logs. Video files. The scope of it was staggering. Gigabytes of data, decades of crimes. Holy shit, Jordan breathed. Dad, look at this. He pulled up a spreadsheet. It listed names, dates, methods, and payouts. 16 victims, not 12. Spanning back to 1992. The Cunningham family's legacy was even worse than Jordan had documented. This is it, Dean said. This is enough to put them all away forever. At 11:58 p.m., with the download at 96%, Jordan's phone buzzed. A call from an unknown number. He showed Dean the screen. It's Kirsten, Jordan said. Calling from a burner phone. Should I answer? She thinks we're dead in 2 minutes. Why would she call? I don't know. Jordan stared at the ringing phone. Maybe guilt? Last-minute panic? Or maybe. The house cameras showed a flash of light in the basement. Then another. The timers had activated early. They moved up the timeline, Dean said, watching flames begin to spread impossibly fast through their home. Why? Jordan's face went pale. Because they know. Somehow they know we're not there. This is a message. The phone kept ringing. On screen, their house was becoming an inferno. 6 years of their lives, burning. But more than that, evidence. Physical evidence that Jordan had been collecting, hidden throughout the house. The backup drives, Jordan said urgently. I had physical backups hidden in my room. If those burn, we have the digital copies. Not everything. Some of Paul's original documents were too fragile to scan properly. I kept them in a fireproof safe in my closet. Jordan was typing frantically. If those burn, we lose critical chain of custody evidence. The download hit 100%. The files from Marjorie's server were secured. But Jordan was right. Without the physical evidence to corroborate it, a good lawyer could argue the digital files were fabricated. Dean made a decision. Where's the safe? Exactly. Dad, no. The house is. Where, Jordan? Back left corner of my closet. Combination is 0-6-2-4. But Dad, you can't. Dean was already grabbing the car keys. Keep downloading anything else you can find. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, you send everything to Agent Osborne and those journalists. You disappear. You survive. Understand. Dad, understand. Jordan's eyes were wide with fear, but he nodded. 30 minutes. Then I send everything. Dean ran. The Civic screamed through empty streets, running every red light. Dean could see the orange glow from 3 blocks away. The fire department hadn't arrived yet, probably called in as an electrical fire, low priority compared to actual emergencies. He parked down the street and ran toward his burning house. Heat hit him like a wall, but the front door was still intact. Smoke poured from the windows, but the main structure hadn't collapsed yet. Dean pulled his shirt over his mouth and kicked in the door. Smoke filled his lungs immediately, burning, choking. He dropped low and moved fast. Living room. Hallway. Flames roared behind the walls, eating through the house like it was made of paper. Jordan's room. The door was hot to the touch. Dean wrapped his hand in his shirt and turned the handle. The room was thick with smoke, but not yet burning. He could see the hospital bed, the wheelchair, all the props of Jordan's false imprisonment. The closet. Back left corner. Dean ripped open the door and dug through shoes and old clothes. There, a small fireproof safe bolted to the floor. His fingers fumbled with the combination. 0-6-2-4. The lock clicked open. Inside were documents in plastic sleeves. Paul Costello's handwriting. Medical records. Photographs. Jordan had preserved everything. Dean grabbed the safe. It was only about 12 inches square, and turned to run. The explosion came from the basement. Gas line. Dean's mind registered distantly. The house shuddered. The floor beneath him buckled, and suddenly he was falling through fire and smoke and collapsing timber. He hit something hard. Pain exploded through his shoulder, his ribs. But his hand still clutched the safe. Through the roaring flames and the ringing in his ears, Dean heard sirens. Finally, the fire department. He crawled through what had been the kitchen. The back door. If he could reach the back door. Hands grabbed him, pulled him. Dean fought until he heard a voice. Sir, we've got you. Stop fighting. Firefighters. They dragged him out into the backyard, into clean air. Dean gasped, coughed, his lungs screaming. But the safe was still in his hands. An EMT tried to take it from him. Dean held tighter. Evidence, he croaked. Murder evidence. FBI. Agent Sam Osborne. They looked at him like he was crazy, but one of them must have believed him because they let him keep it as they loaded him into an ambulance. Dean's phone, somehow still in his pocket, buzzed. A text from Jordan. Dad. Answer me. Are you alive? With shaking, burned fingers, Dean typed back. Got it. I'm okay. Meet Agent Osborne tomorrow. We've got them. The ambulance pulled away from his burning house, sirens wailing. Through the rear window, Dean watched his life turn to ash. But clutched against his chest was everything they needed to destroy the people who'd tried to destroy them. Justice was coming for the Cunninghams. And it was going to burn just as hot as this fire. The hospital discharge papers said Dean had second-degree burns on his hands and forearm, smoke inhalation, bruised ribs, and a possible concussion. The doctor wanted to keep him overnight for observation. Dean signed himself out AMA, against medical advice, and called an Uber to take him back to the Motel 6. Jordan was pacing the parking lot when Dean arrived at 3 a.m. The moment he saw his father, the kid broke down. Ran to him, hugged him carefully, mindful of the bandages. You're insane, Jordan said through tears. Completely insane. I thought I lost you. I made a promise, Dean said. I told you I'd protect you. That meant getting the evidence. They went inside. The room now looked like a command center from a spy thriller. 6 laptops running, screens filled with files and data. The fireproof safe sat on the bed, and Jordan was already pulling out documents with gloved hands, photographing each page. I got everything from Marjorie's server, Jordan said, falling back into business mode, his armor against the fear. 31 years of records. 17 victims total. Financial transactions linking all the Cunningham women. Communication records. Video files. Dad, some of them recorded the murders. They kept trophies. Dean felt sick. Jesus. There's more. I found connections to the men who helped. Vince Humphrey, Randall Piper, and 3 others. They're contractors who've been staging accidents for the family since the early 2000s. For a cut of the insurance money. Jordan pulled up a financial web showing money flowing from insurance companies to the Cunninghams, then to offshore accounts. It's a whole network. And now we have all of it. Agent Osborne will want to see this first thing in the morning. Already scheduled. I called his emergency tip line an hour ago. Left a message that I was the whistleblower he's been communicating with, and that I have evidence related to a series of murders disguised as accidents. He called back 20 minutes later. We're meeting him at 8 a.m. at the FBI field office downtown. Dean looked at his son. This incredible, damaged, brilliant 12-year-old who'd been fighting a war alone. How are you holding up? Jordan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I thought I'd feel more. I thought I'd feel victorious or something. But I just feel tired. And sad. And angry. He looked up at Dean. Is that normal? Yeah, buddy. That's normal. Dean sat beside him on the bed. You just watched your childhood home burn down. You just exposed your mother as a serial killer. Nothing about this is normal, but what you're feeling. That's the healthiest thing you've said all night. They sat in silence, watching news coverage of the fire on one of the laptops. The reporter called it a tragic accident. Electrical fire. Historic home destroyed. The Harris family fortune was that they weren't home at the time. Kirsten appeared on screen, giving an interview. She was crying, perfect tears running down her perfect face. My husband and son were supposed to be home, she sobbed. Thank God they weren't. Thank God. She's selling it, Jordan said coldly, setting up the narrative. Relieved they survived because she didn't know we'd escaped. She'll play the concerned wife until it's safe to express disappointment that we lived. Dean watched his wife lie to cameras, lie to the reporter, lie to the world. She'd gotten very good at it over the years. He wondered if she'd ever told him a single true thing. If there'd ever been any love there. Or if he'd just been mark number 7, another name on a spreadsheet. At 6 a.m., they packed up everything. 3 backpacks full of hard drives, laptops, and documents. The evidence that would destroy an entire family of killers. Dean drove them to the FBI building a nondescript office tower in downtown Seattle. They arrived early, sat in the parking garage, waiting. Last chance to back out, Dean said, though he didn't mean it. Jordan smiled. A real smile. The first Dean had seen in he couldn't remember how long. Not a chance. We're finishing this. At precisely 8 a.m., they walked into the lobby. Dean gave their names to security and said they had a meeting with Agent Osborne. 10 minutes later, Sam Osborne himself came down to meet them. He was in his 40s, graying at the temples, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much. He looked at Dean and Jordan, a burned man and a kid who should have been in middle school, and Dean saw the moment recognition clicked. "You're the whistleblower," Osborne said to Jordan. "The one who's been feeding me information about the Cunninghams." "Yes, sir. And we have everything you need to arrest them. All of them." Osborne studied them for a long moment. Then he gestured toward the elevators. "Come with me. Let's see what you've got." They spent 6 hours in a conference room, laying it all out. The digital files from Marjorie's server, Paul Costello's documents, video of the arson, medical records showing the poisoning, Jordan's 4 years of surveillance and documentation, financial records tracking insurance money through multiple murders. Osborne brought in other agents, technical specialists, prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They watched the videos of Vince and Randall setting the fire. They read the text messages between Kirsten and her accomplices. They saw the spreadsheet of victims dating back to 1992. By 2 p.m., arrest warrants were being drafted. By 4 p.m., tactical teams were mobilizing. At 6 p.m., Dean and Jordan watched from Osborne's office as news broke. Multiple arrests in a complex murder-for-hire scheme. Kirsten Harris, Marjorie Cunningham, Vince Humphrey, Randall Piper, and 3 others taken into custody. Federal charges including murder, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and arson. Kirsten's mugshot flashed on the screen. She looked shocked, confused, like she couldn't understand how this had happened, how she'd been caught. "She'll try to cut a deal," Osborne said. "They always do. But with this much evidence, with this many victims, federal sentencing guidelines don't leave much room for leniency. She's looking at life without parole. They all are." Dean felt Jordan's hand slip into his son's hand, small and warm and alive. "It's over," Jordan whispered. "We won." "Yeah," Dean said. "We won." But as they walked out of the FBI building that evening, Dean knew it wasn't really over. There would be trials, media attention, therapy for Jordan, years of processing the trauma. The road ahead was long and complicated, but they were together. They were alive, and the people who tried to destroy them were facing justice. For now, that was enough. 3 months later, Dean sat in a victim's advocate office, filling out paperwork. The federal prosecutors wanted Jordan to testify, but the victim's advocate was fighting to protect him, arguing that the physical and digital evidence was sufficient without traumatizing a child further. Jordan, meanwhile, was in his first real therapy session. A specialist in childhood trauma who came highly recommended by the FBI's witness protection program. They weren't in witness protection. The Cunninghams were all in custody without bail, but the program had resources that were helping them rebuild. Dean looked different now. He'd lost 20 pounds, the weight he'd been carrying from years of being poisoned. His mind was sharper, clearer than it had been in 6 years. The fog had lifted. Sometimes he'd catch himself thinking clearly about something, and it would stop him cold, remembering what it felt like to be dulled, controlled, manipulated. The burns on his hands had healed into shiny pink scars. He'd keep them, reminders of what he'd survived, what they'd both survived. "Mr. Harris?" The advocate, a woman named Tracy Sheridan, gestured him into her office. "How are you holding up?" "Better," Dean said honestly. "Still processing, but better." "And Jordan?" "He's resilient. Too resilient, maybe. His therapist says he's still in combat mode, having trouble accepting that it's actually over." Tracy nodded. "That's common in cases like this. He spent 4 years in survival mode. His brain isn't going to flip a switch just because the threat is gone. It takes time." They discussed the trial timeline. The prosecution was building an airtight case, but it would take months to sort through all the evidence. Multiple jurisdictions were involved now. Deaths in Washington, Oregon, California, even one in Nevada. The Cunningham operation had been wide-ranging. "The good news," Tracy said, "is that Paul Costello's family is finally getting answers. His sister has been trying to prove his death wasn't an accident for 7 years. You and Jordan gave her that closure. Dean thought about Paul Costello often, the man whose storage unit had saved their lives, whose documentation had provided the foundation for Jordan's investigation. In a strange way, Paul had gotten his revenge. His evidence would help convict the woman who'd murdered him. There's something else, Tracy said. The insurance companies are filing civil suits to recover the fraudulent payouts. It's going to be complicated, but there's a strong likelihood that victims' families will see restitution, including you and Jordan. Dean hadn't thought about money. The house was gone. Arson invalidated the insurance policy since Kirsten was a beneficiary. They were living in a furnished apartment, relying on victims' assistance and Dean's savings. He'd had to quit his job as an architect to deal with everything. Money was tight. How much are we talking about? Potentially substantial. Between the civil suits and the criminal asset forfeiture, the Cunninghams' entire estate will be liquidated. That includes all the insurance money they collected over the years. It's going to be divided among victims' families. You and Jordan are victims. Dean tried to process it. Money wouldn't fix anything. Wouldn't give Jordan back his childhood or Dean back his faith in people. But it would mean stability. Security. Jordan could go to college. They could rebuild. What about Jordan's testimony? Dean asked. The prosecutors. I'm pushing back hard. Jordan's written statements and video depositions should be sufficient. The physical evidence is overwhelming. Making a 12-year-old relive trauma on a witness stand isn't necessary, and I'm going to fight to protect him from that. Dean felt relief wash over him. Thank you. After the meeting, Dean picked Jordan up from therapy. His son climbed into the car quietly, and they drove in silence for a while. How was it? Dean finally asked. Weird. She wants me to talk about my feelings. Jordan said it like it was a foreign concept. I'm not good at that. None of us are at first. But it helps. Trust me. They stopped for burgers, real food, not the nutrition-controlled meals Kirsten had insisted on. Jordan ate like a normal kid for the first time and Dean could remember. Actually tasted his food. Smiled at the cheese pull on his burger. Small victories. Back at the apartment, Jordan set up his laptop. He wasn't hacking anymore. Osborne had made him promise to use his skills legally from now on. But he was learning programming properly, taking online courses, channeling his abilities into something constructive. Dean watched him work, marveling at the resilience. Jordan had been broken down and rebuilt himself, had survived what should have destroyed him, and he was still fighting, still moving forward. Dad, Jordan said without looking up from his screen. Yeah. Thank you. For believing me. For getting the evidence from the house. For everything. Dean crossed the room and hugged his son. Really hugged him. You saved us, Jordan. All of this, you did it. You're the bravest person I've ever known. Jordan hugged back, and Dean felt the tension in his son's shoulders finally start to release. Just a little. Just enough. They had a long road ahead. Years of therapy. Legal battles. Rebuilding their lives from scratch. But they'd face it together. As a team. As father and son. And somewhere in a federal holding facility, Kirsten Harris was learning what it meant to be trapped. To be helpless. To have control stripped away. Justice wasn't always perfect. But sometimes, Dean thought, sometimes it came close enough. The trial began 9 months after the arrests. Dean and Jordan sat in the gallery, watching as the prosecution laid out their case. The courtroom was packed. Media, victims' families, legal observers. This was the kind of case that would be studied for years. Kirsten sat at the defense table, looking smaller than Dean remembered. Prison had stripped away her polish, her carefully maintained facade. She looked tired, defeated, and when her eyes met Dean's across the courtroom, there was something in them he'd never seen before. Fear. The prosecution's case was methodical. They presented the evidence in chronological order, starting with the earliest victim in 1992 and working forward. Each case followed the same pattern: marriage, isolation, poisoning, staged accident, insurance payout. 17 men. 17 families destroyed. When they reached Paul Costello's case, they played his video testimony, the recordings he'd made in the storage unit before he died. His voice, shaky but determined, describing his suspicions, showing the pills he'd secretly kept, explaining that if anyone was watching this, it meant Kirsten had killed him. Several people in the gallery wept. Dean held Jordan's hand. Then came Dean and Jordan's case. The arson video played on screens throughout the courtroom. Crystal clear footage of Vince Humphrey and Randall Piper setting incendiary devices throughout the house. Text messages between Kirsten and Vince, planning the murder. Medical records showing the poisoning. And finally, Jordan's testimony. Pre-recorded to protect him from cross-examination, played on video. Jordan, looking impossibly young, explaining calmly and clearly how he'd figured out his mother was poisoning him. How he'd pretended to be paralyzed for 4 years. How he'd built the case, piece by piece, because he knew no one would believe a child. The courtroom was silent as Jordan's testimony played. When it ended, several jurors were crying. The defense tried. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the deaths were tragic accidents, that Jordan's testimony was unreliable because he was a child influenced by his father. But it was weak, desperate. Everyone in that courtroom knew the truth. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Kirsten's face crumpled when the verdict was read. She cried. Real tears this time, not the performative grief she'd shown the media. Marjorie Cunningham sat stone-faced. Vince Humphrey stared at the table. Sentencing came 2 months later. The federal judge was a woman in her 60s who'd clearly spent those 2 months reading every detail of every case. I've been on the bench for 30 years, she said, and I have never seen a conspiracy as cold-blooded, as calculated, as utterly devoid of humanity as this one. 17 men murdered. Families destroyed. Children left without fathers. And for what? Money. Insurance payouts that you spent on luxury vacations and designer clothes. She looked directly at Kirsten. You had everything. A loving husband. A brilliant son. A comfortable life. And you plotted to murder them both. You poisoned your own child for years, kept him imprisoned in a wheelchair, also you could eventually kill him and collect insurance money. I am struggling to comprehend that level of evil. Kirsten tried to speak. The judge cut her off. You will spend the rest of your natural life in federal prison. You will never see freedom again. And I hope, in the decades you spend in a cell, you think about Jordan Harris. About the childhood you stole from him. About the trust you betrayed. About the lives you destroyed. Life without parole. For Kirsten. For Marjorie. For Vince and Randall and the others. Dean and Jordan walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight. Media swarmed, but victim advocates created a buffer, got them to their car. As Dean drove away, Jordan was quiet. He stared out the window at Seattle passing by. You okay? Dean asked. I thought I'd feel better, Jordan admitted. I thought when they got sentenced, I'd feel, I don't know, victorious. But I just feel empty. That's normal. Justice doesn't fix trauma. It just closes the loop. Gives you permission to move on. Can we? Move on. Dean thought about it. Yeah, I think we can. It'll take time. Therapy. Work. But we can build something new. Something better. Jordan nodded slowly. Can we leave Seattle? Start over somewhere new. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Somewhere warm. Somewhere without memories. We can do that, Dean said. We can do whatever you want, buddy. They drove in silence for a while, and then Jordan asked, Dad, do you think I'm messed up? From all of this? Dean pulled over, turned to face his son fully. Jordan, you survived something that should have destroyed you. You're not messed up. You're strong. You're brilliant. You're brave. And yeah, you've got trauma to work through. But you're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be extraordinary. Jordan's eyes welled up. I was so scared. For so long. Every single day, scared she'd figure out I knew. Scared she'd kill you. Scared I couldn't get enough evidence. Scared of everything. But you did it anyway. That's what courage is. Being scared and doing it anyway. They sat in the parked car and Jordan cried. Really cried. For the first time since this whole thing started. Years of fear and stress and loneliness pouring out. Dean held him and let him cry, and he cried too. For the childhood Jordan lost. For the marriage that was a lie. For the years they'd never get back. But when the tears finally stopped, Dean felt lighter. Cleaner. Like maybe, finally, they could actually start to heal. 2 years later, Dean stood on a beach in San Diego, watching Jordan play volleyball with kids from his high school. His son was 14 now, tall and lean, laughing as he spiked the ball. A normal teenager doing normal teenager things. They'd moved south 18 months ago. Fresh start. Dean had found work with an architecture firm downtown. Jordan had enrolled in a private school with an excellent trauma-informed counseling program. They saw therapists, both individual and family. They'd done the work. Jordan still had nightmares sometimes, still struggled with trust, but he was getting better, making friends, playing sports, being a kid. Finally, the civil suits had settled. The Cunningham estate had been liquidated, and the victims' families had received restitution. Dean and Jordan's share had been substantial enough to buy a house near the beach, pay for Jordan's school, set up a college fund. They'd donated a portion to organizations that supported child victims of parental abuse. Paul Costello's sister, Elena Hughes, had reached out. She'd wanted to meet the people who'd finally brought her brother's killer to justice. They'd had dinner, and she'd given Jordan something precious, Paul's journals from before he died. His thoughts, his dreams, his humor. Proof that he'd been more than a victim. He'd been a person. Jordan had read them cover to cover and decided he wanted to study computer science in college. Like Paul, a way to honor the man whose evidence had saved their lives. Dean's phone buzzed. A text from Tracy Sheridan, their victim's advocate who'd become a friend. Saw the news. Marjorie Cunningham died in prison. Thought you should know. Dean felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just a distant acknowledgement that another chapter had closed. He texted back, "Thanks for letting me know." Jordan jogged over, sweaty and grinning. "Did you see that spike? Right past their blocker." "I saw it. Very impressive." Dean handed him a water bottle. "You having fun?" "Yeah. Reed invited me to a party next weekend." "Can I go?" Normal questions. Normal teenage life. It still surprised Dean sometimes. "Yeah, you can go. Usual rules. Text me when you get there and when you're coming home." "Thanks, Dad." Jordan started to run back to his friends, then stopped. Turned. "Hey, Dad. I'm glad we moved here. I'm glad we're us." Dean smiled. "Me too, buddy. Me too." He watched his son rejoin the game, watched him laugh and play and just be 14. All the things he should have been doing for the past 6 years. The Cunninghams were gone, dead or in prison. The threat was over. The trauma was healing. And Dean and Jordan were building something new. Not perfect, not undamaged, but theirs. Real, true. On the beach in San Diego, with his son laughing in the sunshine, Dean Harris finally let himself believe it was over. They'd survived. They'd won. And they were going to be okay. Justice had been served. The victims had been avenged. And a father and son who'd faced the worst humanity had to offer had come out the other side stronger. The story of Kirsten Cunningham Harris and her family's decades-long murder scheme would be told for years to come. A cautionary tale, a crime documentary, a case study in how evil can hide behind a beautiful face. But for Dean and Jordan, it wasn't a story anymore. It was their past, and they were finally free to walk into their future. Together. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.